Okay, welcome everyone, both to those of you who are here in person and to those of you who are joining us online. My name is Geoffrey Rockwell. I'm a professor in the Department of Philosophy and in Digital Humanities, and here at the University of Alberta. I want to start with an acknowledgement of the land that we're on and the people that we're thankful to. The University of Alberta, its buildings, labs, research stations, the infrastructure that makes these online conversations possible is primarily located on the territory of the Nehiyaw, Niitsitapi, Métis, Nakota, Dene, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe lands that are now known as Treaties 6, 7, 8, and the homeland of the Métis. The University of Alberta respects the sovereignty, lands, histories, languages, knowledge systems, and cultures of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations. And I want to add that it's my understanding that near here was a place where there was a ford, which was one of the reasons why Edmonton is here in some sense. And as a ford, it was a meeting place where people could cross the river and could therefore would meet and join here. And in some ways, I think of the university as a meeting place and of events like this as a form of meeting where we bring together colleagues with different perspectives on subjects. I also think that there's something fundamentally landless about artificial intelligence. And this is something that we have to start thinking about, and that these territorial acknowledgements are a challenge to a technology that seems abstract and without a physical presence. Though, of course, we know it has machines hidden away and so on. There's a number of outfits and people that I would like to thank. I would like to, first of all, thank the Cool Institute for Advanced Study, which is actually in this building. They provided support for this and the event coming up through a dialogue grant. So I'm very thankful to the director, Mike O'Driscoll, and staff. I need to thank the UNESCO IFAP group, the Information for All program. They're the organizers of the Artificial Intelligence for Information Accessibility, AI4IA 2025 conference. And this is a satellite event for that larger conference. And one of the neat things about this conference, I've been part of it now for a number of years, one of the neat things about this conference is it has a truly global reach. It is not a conference of the usual suspects. It is one that, because of the UNESCO, because of the chair of this, of IFAP, connects to people who have very different perspectives on technology because of where they're coming from. I want to thank the Office of Research of the College of Social Sciences and Humanities, Oliver and Nico, who really have provided the administrative support. Nico gets up at, what time are the meetings? 7 in the morning or something like that on a regular basis. I think that is we're very lucky to have, at least in the college that I'm part of, to have fabulous research support and support for these types of events. And of course, I want to also thank our presenters who have brought their thoughts together and are going to share them with us today. So Faith Majekolagbe, Gillian Lemermeyer, Andy Knight, and John Simpson. So a couple of important notes. We're recording this transmission, and it'll be made public openly during the AI4IA conference on September 28th. After that, it'll become publicly available on YouTube and the U of A library streaming service, Aviary. So especially for our colleagues online, if you don't want to be seen, find a way to mute your, remove your picture and so on. This satellite event is part of a larger international event, the AI4IA 2025, in which there's going to be a conference that's going to explore, this online conference is going to explore a range of topics under the central theme, AI access in focus. And we're going to be looking at the implications of AI, the risks and opportunities, especially as they're understood and can relate to the broadest cross-section of people. We're going to tackle pressing questions about trust, communication, the social nature of technical systems, and hopefully speakers will be offering a multi-dimensional view of AI's role in our lives. There are 3 thematic tracks that structure this year's program: AI and the question of trust, breaking accessibility barriers in communication, and the technical is social. We expect to have more than 70 speakers presenting their lectures in an on-demand format. And if any of you, some of you may not have participated in previous ones, we use an environment called GatherTown, which looks a little bit like a 1980s video game. You're sort of looking at a space with carpets and things like that. You've got a little character, and all the different talks, because we're trying to make this accessible around the world at different time zones, all the talks are pre-recorded and loaded onto these little carpets, so you can sort of wander and listen to the people that you want to listen to, and speakers will be available at times on there, so you can go and ask them questions, or you can just meet people. So it's more like a fair than a conference. And it's actually a really nice sort of environment that you can drop in on. The date is September 28th. And I'm very proud to say that U of A is one of the major supporters of this conference. It's Nico actually designs the GatherTown. What would you call the space? It's like a large casino or something.
It's a large Senate chamber.
It's a large Senate chamber.
Yeah.
There we are. It's lots of carpets and whiteboards and something like that. So at this point, we have a recorded remarks by the Vice Chairman of UNESCO's Information for All program and the Chairman of the UNESCO IFAP Working Group on Information Accessibility, Cordell Green.
Hello and welcome. I'm pleased to join you for this satellite event, one of 9 being convened in the lead up to the 6th AI for IA conference on September 28. Gatherings like this help bring into focus a wide spectrum of perspectives: technical, ethical, cultural, legal, and social. They offer space for thoughtful exchange and creative expression, for surfacing local insights and deepening our shared understanding of artificial intelligence and its impact on our lives. I thank all participants, the local organizers, and partners for bringing this event to life. I also thank the AI for IA Planning Committee for their continued work. Your contributions are helping to build a richer, more connected conversation, one that will carry forward into the main conference. See you on the GatherTown platform on September 28th for the 6th AI for IA virtual conference.
Great. So now I'm going to invite our speakers. I'll introduce them and then invite them each to talk on the subject of how artificial intelligence promises to automate bureaucratic tasks, from the assessment of applications to generating legal documents. What are the opportunities and dangers, and whether AI promises to help with the administration of education, of governance, medical decision-making, justice, public policy, and or technology. So I want to first introduce Faith Majekolagbe, Assistant Professor, the Faculty of Law, to address us.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for the kind invitation. Today I would like to offer some brief remarks on the automation of decisions in the context of administrative decisions of government and also decision making in the justice sector. A good starting point is to know that administrative decisions and legal or justice-related decisions are not bureaucratic tasks. They are decisions that have real impact on real people and on real life. So I just want to start with that these are not bureaucratic decisions. These are real decisions. These are decisions that have real impact on people. And so while automated systems can reduce the cost of government and legal administration and promote maybe speedy decision making, and sometimes even eliminate human bias, which is something we're all concerned about, the application of these technologies also have the potential to perpetuate existing bias within our administrative and justice systems. And these are biases that have disproportionately affected vulnerable and marginalized groups. For instance, when automated systems are used to make decisions regarding policing, communities and people who have been historically targeted and surveilled might be more likely to be targeted again if the data that are used are historical data on historical patterns that reflect patterns of policing that have discriminated against people who are racialized, marginalized, and impoverished in our society. So that's something that I am concerned about when it comes to automation of decision making in the justice sector when we use automated systems for predictive policing and also for prosecutorial decision making. I am concerned that we would be using systems that are trained on historical data and data that have discriminated against people who are marginalized and vulnerable. There is also the concern about judicial review. So most of the decisions by government bodies are often reviewed by the courts. So we have judicial review of government decisions. So when the government make decisions about immigration, for instance, or when there are decisions that are made regarding whether some social services should be provided to a particular person or to a particular community. Yes, these are administrative decisions, but we also want those decisions to be procedurally fair and also substantively fair. And the only way in which we ensure that is by having a form of judicial review of those decisions. So the courts would usually review those decisions for procedural and substantive fairness. Now, oftentimes when the courts review administrative decisions of government bodies, they rely on the reasoning for making those decisions to evaluate the substantive fairness of those decisions. They also rely on the process for making those decisions. So they rely on written records regarding the processes that were taken by the decision makers. Now, when we use automated systems to make those decisions, this presents a challenge for the courts when reviewing these decisions for fairness. We're all aware of the black box nature of automated systems. And when automated systems do not provide reasoning for their decision making, courts are in a situation where they don't know how to judicially review those decisions for fairness. And also for correctness, also for reasonableness. What's a reasonable decision when that decision is being made by algorithms? So that presents challenges for the courts, and that affects due process and justice, because as a person who an administrative decision has been made concerning me, I expect that I would have recourse to judicial review. But when the courts are handicapped and cannot review that decision making, then it presents a real justice issue for me or for persons who are affected. Apart from the issue of transparency, which then affects the reasoning for decision making and judicial review of those decisions, we also have the issue of who is accountable for a particular decision. Because when government decisions are made, decisions in the justice system are made, the courts review those decisions and also try to determine who is accountable for those decisions when we issue judicial reliefs. Who are we issuing those reliefs against? And so when there is no human or governmental authority that is making that particular decision and algorithms are making those decisions, then there is also the issue of who do we hold accountable for those decisions. And also there is the concern of a decision being made by an algorithm and us working back the reasoning. So we do know that at some point, if a claimant files for judicial review, I have to provide the reasoning to the court. So would we be faced with a situation where human actors are trying to provide reasons for a decision that was made by an algorithm? And what would those reasoning look like? Would it actually be the reason for that particular decision, or would we have fabricated reason for those decisions? Again, that's a justice issue. There is also the issue of privacy. Most automated systems used in administrative and legal decision making are proprietary systems owned by third-party commercial companies. And this exposes the data of people to exploitation in ways that may be harmful to them. So it raises issues relating to privacy law. Many times people are not even aware that their data are being used for predictive policing, or their existing data are being used to make decisions regarding whether they would be granted protected status in Canada and things like that. And so that's a concern. Privacy is a concern. We have there is a constitutional basis for privacy in this country. And so when that's an issue, then the charter rights that we so dearly hold on to in this country, that has a very significant implication on our charter rights in Canada. Also, using automated systems to make decisions regarding the provision of social services and legal aid, for instance, could also lead to decisions that might be fast. And we do have this saying that justice delayed is justice denied. So we do want people to be able to get access to legal aid services quickly. But we also want people to have fair decision making. We also want a situation where decisions are made regarding who gets legal aid. We want that decision to be fair. We don't just want the decision to be fast. We want fair decisions. But the use of automated systems in making such decisions as to who gets legal aid, for instance, could overlook some contextual factors that are crucial to fair decision making. As human beings, sometimes we expect that when a human is reviewing our application, there are some human values that are infused into that. And so even when we fill in our applications and we write the reason why we deserve a particular social service or we deserve legal aid, we write that from a human perspective. And so most decision making by governments, legal and quasi-legal bodies that affects people directly are decisions that often require discretion and empathy. And those are things that are not reflected in our laws, but those are things that we've come to expect even in decision making, even in judicial decision making. And I know there is the need to eliminate bias, but that shouldn't be at the risk of removing the human element from decision making, which we've all come to expect. We've all come to expect that, a decision is made by people who are our peers. They are human beings, and so they think like us, or they might think like us. But when these decisions are being made by machines or by algorithms, the people at the center of those decisions might have prepared those decisions, especially when there is no disclosure. I would have prepared a particular application with the understanding that people who have discretion, who have empathy, would be able to review that particular decision. But then I am at a disadvantage because there is this machine that I don't understand how it makes decisions, so I can't even preempt it. And then that makes decisions regarding things that are important to me. So when decisions that require humanity are delegated to automation, we risk dehumanizing legal and administrative tasks or processes and harming people. While automating administrative decisions in the justice system may be able to eliminate some human bias, it also removes human values that we value. My fear is that the design values embedded in algorithms will inevitably become embedded in public behavior. That when we have this human-machine collaboration, especially when in making administrative decisions or legal decisions, we also risk a cross-fertilization of values between the design values in machine and also the values in humans. And that might even be unconscious. And there may also be a very real possibility that we take on the biases that are inherent in the machines, and we take on the processes of algorithms and progressively alter the standards that we use to make administrative and legal decisions. And that's a reality that I do not want to see, because I think that's very problematic. So I'll leave it at that, and I will talk about some other things during the Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Our next speaker is Andy Knight, who is a professor in the political science department of the Faculty of Arts, always here at the University of Alberta.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I think sometimes the voice gets deadened in this room for some reason, so I hope I'm clear enough for you. I want to thank, first of all, KIAS and the College of Social Sciences and Humanities, as well as UNESCO, IFAP, and all my co-panelists for this wonderful event. It is a privilege to be here today to reflect on the opportunities and the dangers of applying artificial intelligence in administration. And first, I want to situate my remarks against the backdrop of what I called the interregnum. It's a period of turbulence, uncertainty, disequilibrium as the world moves from one order to the next. We are not introducing AI into a stable environment. We are layering AI into institutions that are already under strain. Courts, for example, with backlogs, immigration systems that are overloaded, schools that struggle with inequities, governments that are losing public trust. So this is what makes the promise of AI so enticing on the one hand, but also so perilous on the other. Let me first begin with the opportunities. Artificial intelligence has enormous potential to improve administration. We know this because there are efficiencies. For example, studies suggest that nearly 2/3 of administrative tasks, from scheduling to compliance checks, are repetitive. AI can handle these very reliably, forcing staff to focus on higher order work. So imagine immigration officers who can no longer have to be drowned with paperwork, but instead focus on the human dimensions of the cases that they are before them. Also, in terms of better decision-making, artificial intelligence can help identify trends, whether in case law, backlogs, benefits claims, or public health records. So policymakers act on evidence rather than on instinct. And in terms of consistency, in terms of accuracy and consistency, properly designed AI systems can reduce errors that creep into the manual process. And this matters in critical areas like transportation safety, healthcare administration, etc. In terms of personalization, AI can tailor services, for example, in education. Tools can be adapted to recognize different styles of learning and expression, including nonlinear writing patterns that sometimes are associated with people with autism and ADHD. Done right, this could expand inclusion rather than limit inclusion. In terms of global reach, for developing societies with thin administrative capacity, AI agents can leapfrog over barriers. As small businesses in Southeast Asia, I was just back from Korea, recognize that many of the small businesses are using AI for bookkeeping, tax preparation, bypassing decades of bureaucratic backlog. So this is very important as we try to understand what the promise of AI. But with these promises come very real dangers as well. Think about job displacement. Let's be honest, some administrative roles will change or disappear altogether. Clerical jobs, data entry, scheduling, these are the most vulnerable. And the question is not whether this will happen, but it will happen for sure, but how we prepare for this through retraining, through reskilling, through reimagining work so humans can move into roles that require judgment, empathy, and creativity. And then there's the challenge of the bias and inequities that we're faced with. If AI is trained on biased data, it will simply reproduce that biased data and even magnify those biases. So think of immigration decisions, hiring processes, grading tools that misinterpret, in some cases, neurodivergent expression. We risk creating systemic barriers if humans are removed from oversight. And then there's a question of opacity and trust. Many AI systems operate as black boxes, as Faith mentioned. In an era of fragile trust that we're in right now, opiate decisions in justice, immigration, and benefit systems will deepen that suspicion. And in terms of security and fragility, these AI tools are vulnerable to cyber attacks. Over-reliance on automated systems could paralyze an entire ministry, could paralyze an entire university if a hack shuts down the operation. And then there's environmental costs. We have to acknowledge, as I just found out recently in another forum, that AI training and deployment requires enormous energy resources. Using AI to speed up administration while worsening would eliminate pressures that would make the advancements in environment a very hollow victory. Well, there's also the challenges in implementation. A skills gap in AI, particularly in the public sector, is one of those challenges that we face. Secondly, there's a need for high quality representative data. And thirdly, there is the urgency of developing flexible, adaptive regulations that do not stifle innovation, but protect the public interest. So where do we go with this? What do we do? Responsible AI development is a very, very important. Transparency, accountability, inclusivity must be the watchword of this new development. And this is a non-negotiable, for me, a non-negotiable tactic. Tools must be tested for bias, not only against race and gender, but also in terms of neurodivergence, disability, and socioeconomic background. Collaboration, developers, policymakers, and communities, including immigrants, neurodivergent citizens, frontline administrators, must co-design the systems. Otherwise, we create a policy vacuum where most vulnerable voices are not heard. And then there has to be continuous oversight. AI should be monitored, like public infrastructure, for example, and not left on autopilot. And when errors occur, responsibility must rest with human institutions deploying it rather than algorithms. And then education literacy. Finally, organizations must provide accessibility in terms of resources so that staff, from faculty to administrators to students, understand what AI can and cannot do. AI literacy is becoming as essential as digital literacy was about a generation ago. So in closing, let me leave you with these two thoughts. In the interregnum, this period of flux and uncertainty, disequilibrium, AI can either destabilize or strengthen our administrative systems. If used carelessly, it risks deepening the inequalities that exist. It risks eroding trust. It risks displacing vulnerable workers. But used wisely, it can enhance justice, it can enhance and expand inclusion, and it can give human beings back the time that is necessary to focus on judgment, empathy, and creativity. The outcome itself is not predetermined. It depends on how we design, how we regulate, how we embed AI into our institutions today. And I think that's why conversations like this really matter. So I want to thank UNESCO for organizing these conversations, because this fragile moment in which we live, a world of disorder, a world of what I call a world order that's in transition, if you will. AI will either be a tool that fuels turbulence or one that helps to build more responsive, more humane, and more just systems of governance. So thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Gillian Lemermeyer, and she is an assistant professor of the Faculty of Nursing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation, to everyone here who invited me and the larger UNESCO event organizers, of course. It's really an honor to be alongside the other presenters here today. My argument, if you will, since we were set up in part to think about this as a debate, maybe more my perspective, is that it is more helpful to talk about the opportunities and dangers of the application of AI and administration as individual technologies rather than as a monolithic block. We need to look at each technology for itself and for the manner in which it's being used, its context. That's the way I've been trained to do research. That's sort of an underlying idea. That's HUD. To me, as a researcher, first, this means interrogating the ethics and effects of individual technologies and the way they shape and change the work they're meant to be doing. When I received this invitation, I was thinking about AI and administration is a little bit different than the way I typically think about it, which tends to be in AI in healthcare or nursing practices and how it will change our relationships with patients. AI in research. So, are LLMs really going to help and work to look at literature better and quicker and more efficiently? And as a teacher, of course, what do I do about students that aren't writing anymore because they're downloading it all to LLMs? But administration, like what? So my first question really was, well, what are administrative tasks? And I think it's hard for me anyway, to really disentangle administrative work from the work or the practices of research, education, and healthcare. And I'm not sure if they are fully disentangleable. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Another thing, as I was working on that idea of disentangling, separating, looking at administrative work differently than the work of healthcare research teaching, is there a possibility that we will begin to think about administrative work as, lesser work, which we all learned certainly in the pandemic. Sometimes, this work that we've been called unskilled or de-skilled. Well, we learned very quickly how important that work was. It's what kept us all going. So is there a type of prejudice about the value of work that might be revealed as AI is used more and more in more and more applications? Some of you might remember a meme from last year. It was a tweet, or at least it was captured in a tweet. I'm not quite sure how it first came out, from an author and video game enthusiast, Joanna Majekolagbe, with apologies for that pronunciation. And it said, "I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my dishes and laundry." And I remember when I first came across it and I was like, yeah, that's what I think. AI should be washing the dishes. And then as I kept sort of thinking about it and working in this area, I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I know that dishes and laundry aren't exactly administrative tasks, as we probably are thinking about them here. But for me, they capture some of the everydayness of administrative tasks, the ones that need to be done to keep everything else functioning and happening and running. My clinical practice as a nurse was in the neonatal intensive care unit a long time ago, so before electronic health records were instituted. So if I think about the administrative tasks in that job, then I might think that writing notes fit into administration, filling out forms, certainly. A lot of that is now taken over by the electronic health record, where you type in your notes and the forms are generated. Everything is kept track of in this, big application that is connected in all kinds of ways across the province. I hear from my friends and colleagues that are still working in clinical practice that it is both good and it is both helpful, and it's also very time consuming. So some of the good things that we think about AI being fast and accurate is only borne out to a certain point. So I think we need to look at these technologies in their own context to really decide what the opportunities and dangers are. Again, some more specific things that I was thinking about, as a researcher, there's so much paperwork and process in research, and I'm so grateful for the help I get from my research coordinator with all of that practice. Could that be done by AI? It actually seems like maybe there are some opportunities there to make some things flow a little bit easier. But I already worry that I've downloaded so much to her, offloaded, I think is the better term, that I don't know how to do these things without her, which might, and does it matter? Does it matter? When I was in grade school, it was, you couldn't use a calculator because you're not going to be walking around with a calculator all your life. And of course, now we are all walking around with a calculator. So it's, my arguments are all over the place because I do go back and forth all the time about worrying too much about changes in the world and life, but also, not being so seduced by technologies that we forget to look at all of the other consequences that they bring. As teachers, many of you probably know in this room, we've recently changed to a different LMS system called Canvas. So now all the professors and instructors are learning how to format and organize our courses in meaningful and user-friendly ways. Another place where I could get help with this, I could get help from our e-learning team at the faculty, but I don't know how to change things when a student points out something, you said this, but it's actually written like this on Canvas, just a typo or an error. It's harder for me to correct. So I think what I'm getting at is partly what I want to pay attention to is how AI and administrative tasks, which seem like maybe something we don't all have to worry about, actually separates us from the world and being able to live in the world in meaningful ways. So as I was thinking, what is administrative tasks? What are administrative tasks? There are some things, and overall, my general thinking about AI technologies is that AI should do the things it's good at, and humans should do the things that we're good at, whether AI can do them or not. Very general, happy to talk about that more. But one of the things in medical care is the reading of medical images. And AI is very, very good at reading medical images. I mean, literally, AI sees patterns before humans sees them, sees the patterns way faster than humans sees them. I'm not going to be so bold as Geoffrey Hinton in 2016 to say we don't need radiologists anymore, but I do wonder about as AI takes over that task, will it still be seen as a task of expertise? And I mean, this really has been a task of expertise, hours and hours and years of training to recognize patterns. Will that now become administrative work because we can just ask the AI to do it? Of course, it would still need health practitioners to decide on treatment, but even more so then, is that just an administrative step? Does that matter? I don't know. But it's interesting, I think, in the larger picture to think about how AI and administrative tasks might change the way we think about things. What might we lose? Which was my take, I suppose, on the dangers. As I've explained, I think we might lose learning through doing. So because we don't go through these sort of, as we're learning, the sort of basic tasks, if you will, kind of might question that word, but the fundamental or the first tasks for early career professionals, junior researchers, it's often how you will learn how things are done. You learn attention to detail, how to navigate the institution. So if AI bypasses those tasks, then the people might miss really formative experiences in organizational life. I worry about a loss of institutional memory. Already, I have young adult children who, back to the math calculator example, they don't even trust themselves to do the most basic math because they've just always used a calculator. And it doesn't really affect their lives, to be honest, so far. But I still worry about, the sort of more deeply in institutions, like the unwritten history of institutions, of organizations, what's been tried before, what do the rules really mean in practice? Who do you call when things get stuck? Like these sorts of the way things work, where over automation might strip away this memory and leave institutions, I think, more brittle. And then, of course, I worry about a loss of agency. So if AI more and more is involved in administration where things like workflows live, so AI starts to more and more dictate the workflows, do people start to feel like these sort of more passive executors of what the AI system decides? So, then I think we could expect frustration, even moral distress, and sort of knowing maybe what should be done, but being channeled another way, especially maybe in health and education where the work is so relational and value laden. As Dr. Knight said, I think the question isn't whether the effects of AI will be felt in job loss and security vulnerabilities and et cetera, but really when and how. This takes me back to the beginning of staying aware, the importance of staying aware and looking, for me, that will be through research. I think interdisciplinary research, looking not just at the instrumental achievements of AI, but also the socio-material and existential effects, the consequences we didn't expect, and of course, the ethics of AI technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. And now our last speaker is John Simpson, who is Director of Digital Research Services, Information Services and Technology here at the University of Alberta.
I suppose I should say good day at an international conference as opposed to good morning because we're not sure where we are. So thank you very much for having me and making the space for me. And I recognize that I stand a little apart from my esteemed colleagues because I'm part of the administration of the university directly as opposed to being a faculty member, which is also part of the administration, but in a different way. So I'm thankful for having the opportunity here. A few wonders to share. The first one is I really have this powerful promise that I really want to embrace, that it's this freedom from drudgery that we're kind of at. But with this promise, I also wonder what the consequences are. And I don't mean that necessarily in a negative sense, but just what will come, what good things will come of this as consequences and what dangerous things will come of consequences. And this comes from my own observation of starting to use AI. Really like it. Right? Like I often really like what it comes out, and there's parts of it's like, wow, like I wish I'd said that. And then I get to the point where I'm like, I would have said that if I'd spent the time, but I don't think that's true a lot of times. And so it's not me, right? Like at the end of the day, no matter how much I can convince myself that I like what it did it faster. I'm not necessarily going to say it did it better, although sometimes when it just make me a list, it does that list better than I would have made that list and add stuff I would have forgotten. And so I wonder what the benefits of the drudgery are. And it makes me wonder about efficiency and inefficiency. And I worry that machines and artificial intelligence will continue a trend that we've had for a period of time, and that's squeezing out what inefficiencies and ambiguities there are in the world. And this is a problem on one hand because it kind of gives us a space to be human. But on the other hand, it's so nice, right? Like the promise of being able to do art and be creative and so on. Like I worry that we'll be tempted by that promise and quickly find ourselves in a space where we can't be the sort of beings that we are. And given how fast AI will move and technology, and let's not even talk cyborgs, we'll get to a space where we're not us in any recognizable way and we're unhappy. I wonder too about the talk about opaque boxes, because yes, they are opaque boxes, but they're opaque boxes that are different than the ones that we're familiar with. The opaque boxes that we're familiar with are us, right? We talk about, well, I can't see what's going on inside an AI algorithm. Well, you kind of can. You just can't understand it because there's a billion parameters. I can't see what's going on inside your head, right? And yeah, there's a billion parameters going on in there too, but it'd be really unfortunate for me to open you up and to see all these things. And then there's even the question of, even if I could see it, could I understand it? We're not that kind of thing. And we're in danger right now, not of having decisions be made by algorithms because we are machines and we make our decisions by algorithms, but they're algorithms we're comfortable with and they're algorithms we trust others to. I worry that as we move to the machines are of a different sort than we are, and they are powerful efficiency seekers. And as we look to do it better, to make that better list, to get to the point where I can do my art and be creative in my own space, that we're really giving too much premise to hyper efficiency. There's value in doing the dishes and the space for your mind to wander. When it comes back to another wonder I have in terms of administering, I don't know if you've ever seen administrators fight, right? And maybe you've had one that was on your side and initially there was an injustice and you called an administrator. It could be a lawyer, it could be an administrative assistant, it could be somebody who just knows the system and the policies better, and they come up and they win the day for you, right? But sometimes somebody calls a more powerful administrator and they know other policies and then they win the day for them. And I wonder about setting AI legal bots to fight each other. And I wonder what the consequence of that will be for us. And this is a toy thing, but I think it's real and serious because it stands to squeeze out a lot of the space that we have, again, to do the things we like to do. Add in sensor technology that's all over the place and monitoring and so on. And what happens if every time you drove over 110 kilometers on the highway, that was tracked, right? And that was reported and you were somehow in trouble, right? What happens if every time we misspoke and as we do, we said something that was unkind or uncaring or racist without our realizing it, and we didn't have the grace and the forgiveness to forgive and to overcome because AI was there with the sensors that monitor everything to just squeeze us out. I wonder about that. And I wonder too, because it would put us on our best behavior, but would it really be us? I don't know. I suppose I'm conscious of time and I know we're coming to the end here, so I'll skip a bunch of things. And I'd like to share one quote from Norbert Weiner, 1954, just a quick snippet. He says, "It is simply economically impossible to compete with a bulldozer for bulldozer work. The new industrial revolution which is taking place now consists primarily in replacing human judgment and discrimination at low levels by discrimination of the machine." And I think that perhaps the shift from maybe 1954 to now is really that we're now in this new industrial revolution where it's really, we're talking about doing it at all levels, right? I think there are no potential sacred cows here. Like we'd like to say, well, I'll be the one who will judge the machine. I don't know. I don't know if we can really do that. We really struggle to do it for ourselves. And in doing that, given that we're allowing so much judgment to machines elsewhere, which we call artificial intelligence, I wonder what that would really mean. What would it look like to be the one to say that's fair, that's not fair? Particularly when we're already informed by the machines, right? But every search that I do in Google, I'm like the rest of you, I'm gonna go, forget about top 10. People talk about, oh, it's not 10. It's like, if it's not top 3, forget it. I'm not looking at it, right? And we'll get there with AI too, right? It'll get to the point where it's like, yeah, I put in some prompt. I was a prompt engineer. I don't know. So I worry that and Geoffrey asked just at the beginning to have this inversion between administrative and can we grab it here? Was it talking about AI and admin, but switching it to administration of AI? And I wonder if we're able to do it, because I'm not sure that we do a good job of it overseeing ourselves right now. But I wonder how good and how terrifying it would be to have AI oversee us. And so those are some of my wonders. Thank you for the opportunity to share them. I look forward to discussion.
Okay, well, thank you all. We have a number of people online, and a number of the people who registered submitted questions, and so I've sort of gathered some of the questions that were submitted, merged them, played around with them and so on like that. And I want to start off with questions, if you will, that were submitted during registration, and then actually open it to the people who are here to also be able to ask questions. So I'm gonna start with something that I think worries a lot of youth, which is employment. And what's going to happen? Will there be job losses? What types of jobs? Or will it just be, how will jobs change? Will there be sort of loss of tasks? And in particular, I think we had a number of people who were concerned and interested in how we might see different types of jobs, or how jobs at the university will be affected. What we expect will change in terms of the tasks and the type of work that there is at the university. So I'm gonna pick on Andy first to maybe give us some reflections on the sort of impact on employment.
Well, I think, as I said in my prepared talk, obviously, I think with greater efficiency, AI will probably eliminate some jobs. Mostly jobs that are repetitive, most jobs that will not be able to be replicated, I think, by humans. AI tends to take away those type of jobs from human beings. But I think we shouldn't be too concerned, particularly if the jobs that are taken away are the ones dealing with repetition. I think we should be more concerned if jobs that are taken away are dealing with judgment and ethics, morality, those kind of things. Because I think human beings still have the ability to make those type of judgments that the machine cannot make. Despite what my colleague just said about this, I think it's important that we keep that human basis as part of what we do in transforming our employment. So there's a danger, yes, obviously, of job displacement, primarily clerical roles, like I said before. But I think it gives us an opportunity to start reskilling, to start transforming the way that we think about jobs in any case. And that's an opportunity that we should take advantage of.
And Gillian, do you want to address this? Think about, and you have particular perspectives because you also see the healthcare system, which is sort of adjacent and overlapping with the university.
Yes. I mean, I think, and I sort of try and constantly remind myself as I do this research and get into this work and thinking about AIs, it's not the first time that jobs have been lost because of technology. A classic example is, I think like blacksmithing. They used to be the, center of communities, and of course, that's crazy now. It's totally unnecessary and life has gone on. And I think, so always sort of reminding myself, am I making this an AI only problem, or actually, do we have some background, some ways to look at what's happened before? What I wonder about is how we sort of stem the what did you call it, John? The promise, the big promise of AI, the seductive quality of new shiny technology. I also find using AI fun. I understand that. But, to sort of say, well, wait, this is something that makes sense to give over. And this is something that, even though AI can do it, I think we think as a society, this is better for humans to keep doing. And I don't know what that system is. I don't know how that will happen. And sort of that's my worry about, or I think that's the sticky wicket that we're at when it comes to job losses to AI. How can we sort of maintain some agency over what jobs are done by AI and what jobs aren't, to put it sort of simply? I don't know how those decisions, I don't see it yet. Maybe somebody else here sees that.
Well, it often seems that these decisions are made in moments of crisis, when all of a sudden, for good or for bad, some unit is forced to lose a large number of staff, and they're told you can fix it with AI. And I'm going to ask a sort of related question, which is, because all of you, in one way or another, seem to have said that what matters is how we implement and bring it in. So we actually had somebody ask the question, how can administrators, for example, administrators here at the U of A, prepare for the widespread use of AI? And I don't know, do you want to take this, Faith?
Yeah. I think it starts with acknowledging that we're already using AI, and also mapping out what are the areas in which we are using AI, what are some of the effects that would have on employment, on the kind of work that people do, what are some of the works that we don't want AI to do, and how do we sort of move people around, help people to do the kind of work that we don't want AI to do, while also automating the tasks that we want AI to do. I think if we have like a people-centric approach, where we know that work is intrinsically valuable to people, even beyond the financial reward that people get from work, and so prioritizing people and their well-being and their capabilities for development, I think that's an approach that we should take. And if people are at the center of that decision making, then we can make decisions that are forward-looking, that we are not stuck in the past. We are still moving forward, but we are moving forward together with people, not just with machines.
Mm-hmm. I think you put your finger on something that is very important, that work is not just about pay, it's also about dignity. Mm-hmm. And especially here in North America, I'm always struck by, one of the first questions you ask a stranger as you're getting to know them is, what do you do? As if your job was defining. Whereas I grew up in Italy, nobody asked what you do. It's sort of, where do you get your tomatoes is the important question. John, you're actually an administrator, and you're probably, dealing with this more than most people. So, but you also, you're also on a unit which in some ways can, is going to lead and support all of us as we make these shifts with our research.
Yes, and yeah. So to continue from what I was saying on the podium there, I wonder what the consequences of removing a lot of this drudgery work, which I am quite excited about. Mm-hmm. But as it speeds things up, it will do it in ways. I really like the word interregnum. Like we're in this space where things are bumping around and it's going to be chaotic and we're not sure what's going to come of it. And so I think we can be prepared in part by recognizing we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable for the next little while. We need to recognize that as certain places accelerate, other places may not be, right? Because once all of a sudden I can make PowerPoint presentations, or anybody can faster, I can calendars, I can get lists, I can find all sorts of things at speeds that I wouldn't be able to normally do. The people who actually still need to do much of that work are still human. And it's going to take a while for them to well, maybe they'll never catch up, right? Because we'll be human in some sense. And until we sort that out, I worry that we will not be nice to ourselves and to others. Very serendipitously, to close off my answer to this, there was a program on ideas on CBC back on September 15th. And the title of it was, "Are We Born Obsolete? How Technology Makes Us Feel Ashamed." And it refers to a philosopher named Gunther Anders, who talks about Promethean shame. And this idea that technology, and particularly AI, even though it was well ahead, much later than what he was thinking, puts us in a position where we compare ourselves in ways that are not favorable to us. And we judge ourselves. We might describe ourselves as being broken, which is really kind of a machine term or things like that. So anyways, I wonder about that, and I think, yes, you can take all these certain courses, you can do all these things, you can learn how to use AI and so on, but if we could learn to be a little nicer to each other, given the state of confusion, thank you for that term, interrogate again, I think that will serve us all very well, regardless of what comes.
Your point actually reminds me of something that I think Gillian was saying, that some of these tools could end up hiding the administrative, you had a nice phrase for it, the sort of organizational life, and that I think of, the promise of agents that, right now, finding a flight when I'm going to a conference seems to be an incredibly irritating. I have to go get TAP, and then I have to do this, one thing or another, and then, whereas soon I'm expecting I'll sort of go, I need to go to Toronto such and such a date, and here's my Air Canada, my Aeroplan number, and off it goes. But then I lose an understanding of all the things that have to happen and why it's important that this goes through different administrative processes. So I guess what I want to ask is, is there the possibility that we will end up isolating ourselves? Using these agents to do a lot of the tasks that now we do by talking to people, by actually going down and I don't know, giving Oliver a call, or going for a walk with him or Nico or something like that. And in addition to talking about the task that needs to be done, actually having some human contact. And I think we're discovering that, especially elderly people, that sort of administrative contact, or the contact with store clerks and something like that, is incredibly important. So I'm going to sort of open this up to any of you. Do you worry about this loss of contact, or could it actually mean that we have more chance for more meaningful contact? Take it away.
I've wondered about it. An analog to it, just for perhaps something to anchor on, is what about digital maps and how they've changed things? And I was driving yesterday, went down to Rocky Mountain House and came back. It's a 2.5-hour drive. And I just had the map on. And I found that I wasn't really looking around at the world in the same way. I just kind of tunneled in. And I wonder, what you're asking is about the same. Like, if I can just get something from the library, or get these ideas connected, versus going to the library, understanding the space, there's perhaps a loss of serendipitous discovery, although it's not serendipitous because the librarians have stacked the books so you can find them beside each other on a shelf, but there's a stumbling around and finding it. I do wonder about that. I'm very curious about the other cases that came up today, perhaps like in health and law and politics. I would like to hear what my colleagues have to say about the stumbling around, if I can be eloquent about it.
I'm not the one in the medical field, but like, you could check Google and ask about things that are wrong with you, and you read all of that. But today I have a doctor's appointment, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a human doctor and talking to them, despite all the things that I have read, because I feel like there is a lot of value in me just having that conversation with them, different from anything I would find on Google and in medical journals and things like that. And I think it's the same when we think about the legal field. People could get served with like different processes, and you receive all of those court processes, or you keep anticipating the day when you would appear in court and actually face a human judge and face the opposing counsel and talk to real people. And we value all of that contact. And if we replace all of that, I wonder what we, turn ourselves into, and whether we would, really miss those days, and what kind of impacts that would have even on our mental health. Because even meeting a stranger on the street and they saying hello sometimes uplifts my day more than just scrolling through my phone. So
Take it, yeah.
I used to be a chair of a department, so I understand a little bit about administration too. And then, of course, provost fellow responsible for Black excellence and leadership, that put me sort of in proximity to administration, if not in the administration itself. I do think, having gone through the experience of being a chair, I remember the turmoil that was caused when people were simply let go. Without any seeming knowledge of the personal sacrifices that we were making, individuals that spent 30 years at this university and all of a sudden they were gone. There was a kind of an inhuman way that this approach was taken, which bothered me a lot as chair of the department. I tried my best to defend the people under my purview, but it wasn't always successful because AI kicked in and essentially said these individuals are not efficient enough, or whatever, they have to go. I worry about to go to John's point. I worry about those kinds of situations where the human element is not there anymore, where we don't take into consideration the fact that somebody may be suffering from cancer and they need the money just to get through this period of time, but they have to be let go because they were proven to be inefficient or ineffective. I worry about the fact that there are Black individuals who appear to be in perfectly good shape one day, and the next day they are in the hospital for 4 or 5 days because they have sickle cell. I personally suffer from sickle cell anemia myself, so I understand the personal toll it takes on an individual. Somebody called me up the other day, said they wanted to do a sort of a film on sickle cell. I said, professionally, you're probably the oldest person I know with sickle cell. And that says something because most people don't live to be this age with sickle cell. So we need to be able to understand why individuals are suffering and why they may be not as productive as we thought they should be. Rather than to make these sort of arbitrary decisions about letting them go because they're not productive or not efficient or effective enough. This is the other point, I think, is this whole question of reskilling. Who are we to decide what kind of new skills people should adapt to? Although that's very important if you're going through this transformation. And like John was saying, the interregnum is a period of real flux and uncertainty. And this is one of those periods of time when it makes it even more important to have the human dimension of judgment and empathy and care. And I think I'm much closer to that point of view than the other point of view that says let the machine handle it. So that's my concern.
So, in AI ethics, there's a lot of discussion about human in the loop. But a number of people pointed out that human in the loop doesn't mean that you have care. Often the human in the loop is given a a fraction of a second to validate or confirm a decision or something like that. When the Vincennes shot down the Irani passenger jet, there was a human in the loop, but they had almost no time. And when you have automation, you end up getting automation complacency. You know, people who are used to some system producing a judgment that they really don't have the knowledge or the time to second guess, they stop second guessing it. They stop they're in the loop, but they stop being, bringing the care that is necessary. So I think one of the things we have to design is, if we're going to put humans in the loop, if that's important, I think it is, we have to learn how to design systems where the human has meaningful control, has an understanding, can make a meaningful decision. We had a great question. What considerations are you thinking about in the distribution of authority and responsibility for joint activity with AI? So assuming that, you know, a lot of the tasks going forward will often be, you know, in some sense performed by hybrid teams of people and AI. How are we going to think through this distribution of authority and responsibility? And maybe, Faith, you'd like to start on the responsibility side.
When you think about it in the legal context, I'm thinking of who would be able to answer for those decisions. Like, if we have to review a particular decision and we have to get some legal remedies against who? And so who would we be able to enforce those remedies again? Who would actually be able to take legal responsibility for those decisions? And so in distributing those decisions, making sure that decisions that we need people to take responsibility for, that we need people to be able to get legal remedy for, those decisions are decisions that humans make. And so we have somebody who is legally responsible for that particular decision making, because our sense of personhood in law is still limited to human beings and corporations. So if we take it outside of that realm, then we risk having a legal harm without a legal remedy. And so whereas our idea of law is like, when there is a legal harm, there must be a legal remedy. So that's something that I'm thinking about. Would we be able to have a legal remedy, and who would be responsible? Who would show that particular responsibility? And questions of enforcement. When people have a remedy, would they be able to actually enforce it against a particular entity?
Mm-hmm. Authority. Does anyone else have thoughts about the distribution of authority? And
If I may, I think this is one of the areas I feel very strongly about, because governance is not just about rules and authority. One of the things that John was talking about, which I think I agree with him on, is that sometimes individuals, human beings, can make awful decisions. Maybe the machine might do a better job in some cases, but I think one of the things that we should be careful about in this transformational period is to make sure that there's inclusivity. Bring people in at the table when decisions are being made about AI, who may not necessarily be always around the table, because you can't have a single administrator making that decision. It should be a decision made by the administrator, along with, or augmented by, individuals who might be marginalized in some cases. I talk about neurodivergence a lot because I think that's one question I got asked about when I'm preparing for this. But I think those individuals who may think slightly differently than the normal human being might think, we have to bring them into the picture as well. So and the minority groups, Black individuals in healthcare, there need to be some sort of consultation with individuals who are of color, because there's something disproportionately affected in a negative way in the healthcare system, as they are in the police system, as they are in the military. I just finished a big project on white supremacy in the Canadian military, and it's not surprising to me that there's white supremacy in the Canadian military, because 90% of the population of the military are white males. So we need to be more inclusive. We need to bring more people into making decisions that are going to affect the operations from now on, especially if we're going to be dealing with machines, especially if we're going to be dealing with AI. So that was my take on this.
I think that's also part of, when I asked earlier about, what sort of things should administrators be thinking about? And, I think we talked about the need for reskilling and training. One of the things I think I also heard was, we shouldn't be assuming that we know what skills they need. We need to be a little bit more open and let people try things out. But one of the things I'm hearing is that administrators, as they bring in AI, they shouldn't just assume I know my unit, I know what's being done. They should be consulting and bringing in stakeholders to make sure that they've got different perspectives on it. I'm going to, at this moment, open it up to see if there are people here and who want to ask some questions of our speakers. So all of you leap up at once. And thoughts, follow-on statements that you'd like to make? Yes.
My name is Amii. I work with International. I am an administrator. I've been very excited about AI. I love that it'll write Google scripts for me to help automate a lot of my emails and sort of those processes I'm doing. A comment and then a question. So first, Dr. Knight, thank you very much for bringing up neurodivergent. I have been diagnosed as neurodivergent. I use AI a lot to help me with communication with emails when I feel that I want to say something and I'm not able to say it in a way that either people can understand or I'm too abrupt or whatever else. So it's been great in that sense for me. I would also say intercultural perspective needs to be brought in a lot. You talk about people that are neurodivergent, people of color and their experiences. I think that inclusivity could also be brought in under the intercultural. So often when I'm presenting about AI for administrators, I'll talk about using it in order to, again, mostly for communication, emails. I work with Japanese partners all the time. So I'll say, write this email, even though it's in English, write this email so that it's written in a way that Japanese people will feel respected. And so the AI program will, the first thing you ask in Japan is, how's the weather? Or you talk about the weather, and so the email will create that. So, that's sort of some of the things that we can bring into it. One thing that I'm really interested in is, a lot of you have talked about the different way that the brain will sort of be changed as AI is brought into our daily life. I use AI for everything. I use it for gardening, I use it for developing my kitchen, for work, all sorts of different things. And I am concerned about the way that my brain is changing. And there has been some research on cultural neurology here at the university, which shows that the brain creates different pathways depending on your cultural background. So I'm really curious whether anybody was doing work on the neurology behind AI and what it's actually doing to our brains. And the last comment was a lot of what we've already been talking about. We create rubrics to take biases out of the way that we assess students or the way that we do things, right? We're trying to take unconscious and conscious biases out of the way that we do assessment. So wouldn't AI be the perfect answer? But then how do we balance that humanity, that compassion, that care with trying to get rid of those biases, right? Like it seems like they're on opposite ends and trying to find that middle ground is going to be very, very difficult. So I'm just looking for comments on any of the things that I've brought to the table.
I have to run to a class.
So you get the first answer.
I would love to be able to answer that, so I would have the time because I have 5 minutes. But I think I understand what you're saying, and I think that we need to be sensitive about inclusivity. It should be part and parcel of what we do when we start to sort of transform our administration. So I'm totally 100% with you on that. And sometimes I think we eliminate people that we consider not to be thinking the same way we do. And that's why I raise the issue of neurodivergence, because I've come across some of that, even in my classes now. And we have to make special arrangements for those individuals who may not be able to operate in the same capacity the same way that a normal, so-called normal person might. So I think that's important to just take the time to include those individuals that may be marginalized normally. And I'll leave it there. That's
Yeah,
right.
good luck with your class.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You sure you can't just send agent?
AI will take over from here on.
Gillian, do you have any thoughts?
Well, just, sort of referring back to something else I said about, I'm always questioning myself, am I making this an AI problem, or am I before AI, I don't think we were very good at including diverse voices and perspectives in a lot of conversations. So that's not to say of course we should be in all ways. I think it's even more important in AI. We've seen in AI, it's much more likely to, unless again, you're very attentive to it as the coder and the people writing these AI technologies, it actually amplifies human bias in many cases. So I don't think we can rely on it in a general way to do better than we do as humans. And as with everything, all of these things need to be thought through. I would feel very, our question from a moment ago about what considerations do you have about the distribution of authority? I don't think introducing AI is necessarily I don't think it's a tool. I don't talk about AI technologies as tools. That sort of implies it's something we can separate ourselves from, set down. My way of thinking about AI technologies is we are already entangled with them. So to just sort of bring something in without a really thoughtful process and probably researching it as we go, I really think we need to do that for everything. And I would just ask, if we're doing AI for everything, like emails and gardening, and for me, certainly locating myself, I just have no sense of direction. Having a guide, it has changed the way I see the world, it's not exaggerating. We need to also ask, what are we losing? And with me and directions on the phone, I don't get lost anymore. But I also think, I don't get lost anymore. I don't actually just find myself somewhere from having taken a wrong turn. And I know that I lose something by that not being a part of my experience anymore. You had a lot of comments. I don't think I've addressed nearly all of them. But somebody else.
I want to take our last question, perhaps, from the online participants and something like that, and I want to address this to Faith. So, should AI be regulated? Striking a balance between AI regulation and its open source public usage for both in terms of AI research and usage by the stakeholders and the general public. So, do we need laws? Do we need to change the laws, or do we have good laws, regulations, protocols, guidelines? Do we have them already?
I think AI should be regulated. I think that's something we can all agree about. And in terms of our existing laws, why we do have existing laws that could take care of some aspects of AI regulation, it's also something that the law is always catching up with technology. So we don't have all the laws that we need to address some of the issues that we're being presented with. And so I do think that we need more laws. And in terms of the balance between AI regulation and its open source or public usage, I don't think regulating AI necessarily affects its public usage or the open source nature of AI. I think we could still have the open source nature of AI and still have AI regulation, but we do need to regulate AI. There are lots of arms that we need to be conscious of. The way AI are designed and the impacts that could have on children, for instance. So there are different areas in which we need to regulate AI. So AI regulation, I think maybe the balance that we need is the balance between regulating AI and also advancing innovation. And so that's something we definitely need to think about, to regulate in a way that doesn't stifle innovation, but also not to be so caught up with advancement and innovation that we lose sight of some of the harms, the real harms that could result from the use of AI.
So I'm just going to use my chair to do a follow-up question. So Bill C-37, there was the AI and Data Act that was part of it. And it's, was that the right type of regulation? It seemed to, it seemed to be structured to sort of define high risk and medium, low risk. I forget how many levels it had, without actually defining what was necessarily high risk. Does that seem the right way to go about? Was that the right sort of regulation? Or?
Yeah, I think that wouldn't be my choice of where regulating AI. I think to go back to how Gillian started our presentation is looking at the application of AI in different sectors and applying it to different sectors. So my own approach would be to say, what are the laws that we have in the health sector and how do we put AI regulations that? What are the laws that we have for policing and things like that, and then put AI into that, rather than have this generic law that deals with all aspects of AI, because we tend to lose sight of some things in doing that. And when we start categorizing high risk, low risk, medium risk, I don't think that's the way to go, because some things that we consider to be low risk might actually have more impact on people than we actually know.
So on that note, I think we're at the end of the hour and a half. I want to thank our speakers, John, Faith, Gillian, and Andy, who had to rush off to teach a class. And I want to also thank, of course, IFAP and the College of Social Sciences and Humanities, and of course the Cool Institute for supporting this. So thank you very much.